For this Dollar Tree DIY, I'm going to be using 2 of the flour sack towels, some CRICUT Everyday Iron-On in red, some ribbon and some greenery, and 2 long dowels from Walmart. And so the first thing I did was ironed my tea towels. These towels are never the same size and they're not perfectly square, so I'm just going to do my best to try and get them coupled together using some fabric glue so that they're a little bit thicker and not completely see-through. Then I'm going to take my iron-on vinyl and I'm going to cut out a decal using the scripture Isaiah 9:6, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given." So I'll just cut that out using my Explorer Air 2, and then I'm going to place it in the position that I want it. And I actually did this once before and it was a little bit too small for my towel, so I had to recut it. And then once I get it into the placement that I want, make sure it's pretty centered, I'm going to lay it down and then use my CRICUT Easy Press 2, which is 9 inches by 9 inches, but you could do this also with a regular home iron. Just make sure that you don't have any steam on when you do this. And so I'll just do it in different areas because it is so big. Now there's a guide online that tells you how long to leave it and at what temperature it should go. It even tells you when to pull off that plastic covering, and it says to pull it up when it's cool to the touch, but I found that it's actually easier to pull up if you do it while it's still warm. So once my decal is completely down, I'm going to take my dowel rods and glue that to the bottom and top of my banner and then just start rolling it up, and then once I get it to the place that I want it to go, I'll glue it again. Now I really should have pulled out my sewing machine and just made little pockets because it would have been a little bit neater, but I knew most of this was going to be covered up and I still wanted it to look like fabric and not be totally perfect. So I took some string and I'm just going to tie that to each side of my dowel, and you could just leave it this way and not put any pretties on it and it's still pretty and stunning and beautiful, and I love it like this in all of its simplicity. But I went ahead and added some eucalyptus from Walmart and I just used a chenille stem to tie those together, and I'm just setting them in place to see where I want the placement to be. So I took some greenery from Dollar Tree and some burlap fabric striped ribbon, made a perky bow, and then added some medium-sized ornaments, some berries, and just kept adding on and getting it to the fullness and prettiness that I wanted. And then once I was sure that I had it the way I wanted, I took a chenille stem and stuck it through my fabric, around my greenery, and then around the dowel so that it would stay in place. And I wanted to be mindful not to cover any of my words, so that was why I was taking my time with this part. And then I'll add some hot glue and some more chenille stems to make sure that it stays in place, and then it's done. And here it is, all finished, and I absolutely love how this came out. I am so smitten with it. It is super substantial, so I think it would be perfect over the fireplace. It's about 33 inches square, so it's nice and big and puts Jesus right in the center and reminds us of the reason for the season. I love it, and I hope you like it too. If this is your first time visiting our little nest, welcome. I'm Wendy, and I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button down below, as well as the little bell next to it so that you never miss a video. And now, on with our next DIY. For this Dollar Tree DIY, I'm using 3 of the glass jars with lids, 3 candlesticks, and some yummy goodness to stick inside. So the first thing I did was took off all the stickers, and I'm actually going to be using these candle holders upside down. And I'm using my Waverly White chalk paint to paint everything white, including the lids. And then once I get everything all painted, I'm going to put them together, but you do want to make sure everything's completely dry. So I'm using some Dollar Tree all-purpose cement, and then that'll give it the permanent hold, and then my hot glue gun will make it hold immediately. But of course use your E6000 or whatever permanent adhesive you have. And then once I get those placed on there, I'm taking some red and white baker's twine and just wrapping it around that little crease where they come together, and then just tying it into a knot. And then I made a sweet little bow by wrapping that twine around 3 of my fingers 5 times and then tying it with another piece. And then I took some teeny weeny little bits of the greenery and cut off the ends and I'll hot glue those on each side and then pop my bow right in the middle. And then to top it off, I'm going to take a sweet little jingle bell in red and hot glue that right on top. And bells have a lot of different meanings at Christmas time, but for us it's the signification and announcement that Jesus has been born. And since they didn't have emails, cell phones, or the 6 o'clock news back then, this is the way that they would communicate certain events in that time period. So I'm just going to fill my jars with some Christmas candy and candy canes, and I wanted to find the round ball ones that are also in the red and white, but I couldn't find any. So instead I'm going to do something different with the middle one. So since it is going to be a little different, I wanted to raise it, and I'm taking the bottom of this tin container and then just attaching it to the bottom of the candle holder to give it a little lift. And then I'm going to take some mini Christmas trees and cut those down so that they still fit with the lid on, and then I'll glue those to the bottom of my jar and then add some styrofoam snow to the bottom. And then of course we've got to add a little red truck. So I'm just going to take the little hanger of the ornament and pull it down so that it has something to stick into the snow and stand straight up. And then I'm going to take some more of the baker's twine and wrap that around that seam of where I attached my container to the candle holder, and then cut off the excess. And then it's done. And here they are, all finished, and I just love this sweet little trio. Like I said, it was going to have a third kind of candy in there, but I think this makes it even more adorable, and the kids will love to see this as they're getting the treats out of the jars. Super sweet, super simple. I love it, and I hope you guys like it too. For this Dollar Tree DIY, I'm using 2 of the fall signs, and I'm just going to pull off all of the string and the staples from the back. And then I tried to get the paper off of the front using my CRICUT spatula like I normally do, but this wasn't budging, so I did have to end up sanding it all off and making it a smooth surface. So what I'm going to do here is cut these boards in half, and so I'll just measure to find that middle. And then using a super sharp craft knife, I'm going to score it about 10 times and then snap it in the middle, and it'll come right apart. And then to get the middle of the short side, there were 1/8 inch and 16 inches involved, so I had to cheat by taking my measuring tape and just folding it in half, and that got me the middle. And then I measured down 8 inches, and I'm going to make a little peak right there so that it looks like a house. And then I'll just score again with my craft knife and make those little houses. Now, if this is too much work, and it is a little bit hard to push down to get through that wood, so I did go outside and use my miter saw to do all 4 of them at the same time. I have another option that I'll be showing you in the next project. So I'm just going to sand all the edges of my houses, and then I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in white, and using a chippy brush from the Dollar Tree, I'm just going to give these a distressed look using a dry brush effect. And then you can go as dark or as light as you want on this. You could even go completely solid, but I just wanted some of that pretty brown to show through and look really weathered and old. So once my houses were dry, I'm going to flip them over and attach them using some white duct tape. It doesn't have to be white because we're going to paint the backs of these anyway, but I want these to be able to zigzag or kind of fold like a folding screen. So you'll have to leave a little gap in between when you place them together so that it gives them room to go either forward or backward. And then I'll paint the back completely white. And I just wanted to show you what it would look like completely white too, but I also needed to cover up that duct tape. So now I'm going to take 4 of the Dollar Tree greenery stems, and I'm just going to make sweet little wreaths to go at the top of each of our houses by rolling that around, getting the size that I want, and then twisting that wire around at the top. And then I'll use my scissors to give it a haircut on the back so that it can lay flat when we glue it to the top. Now Dollar Tree carries these sweet little bows already made, and I really wanted to use these, but the tails were a little bit long and they were covering the wreath up, so I just cut them off and then replaced them in the position that I wanted, and then I'll use the little wire tie in the back to attach it to the top of my wreath. And then I'm going to take the whole thing and hot glue those to the very top of my houses. And then I'm going to take some white chalk paint and snowy those up and make them look all nice and Christmassy. And you could add as much or as little as you want to these wreaths. And I had thought about putting some red berries on there, but I decided I wanted to go with a super simple look for these houses. So then I'm going to take some craft sticks from the Dollar Tree and paint those using my Waverly chalk paint and ink. And then once they dry, I'm going to get rid of one of the rounded edges with my scissors, and then I'll hot glue those to the bottom of each of the houses, and that becomes our little door. And here they are all finished, and I just love how these turned out. I think this would be a perfect backdrop for a nativity scene, or if you just need some horizontal coverage on a shelf or something. I love the simplicity. Again, it is a little bit difficult to cut through that wood if you don't have a saw or something like that. So I do have another option, and I'm going to make it a little bit different so that you don't have just two of the same exact projects here. So I'm taking a piece of black foam core board, and I'm going to use my houses that I bought at Target a while back to use as templates, and I'm just going to draw around them on my foam board, and then I'm going to cut them out using a craft knife. And for this project, I'm going to be making two different sizes, but again, you could do the exact same thing that we did with the other wood houses, and you can make it as long, as tall, or whatever dimensions you want. Now, I had planned to cut all of these windows out, not the really small ones. I was going to make those bigger on the shorter houses, but I quickly realized that I had too many houses to do this and I would never get this video out. So I'm still going to show them to you, but I have 4 of the tall houses and 3 of the smaller houses, so it was just way too time consuming. But if you have the time, you definitely want to cut these out, and I think it would be super, super cute. So once I got my houses cut out, I'm going to take my sanding block and just sand the edges of all of them. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing that I did with my other houses. I'm going to paint these white. And then to give it a little more textury goodness, I'm going to run my paintbrush through the semi-dry paint. And then that makes it kind of streaky and look like wood. And I'm also going to paint the sides so you can't really tell that it's foam board. And that paint just covers it right up. And then just like before, we're going to leave some of that black peeking through for our distressing. So now I'm going to take some Dollar Tree wooden letters and I'm going to spell out the words peace, joy, and hope. And these packages only come with one E, which is kind of silly. So thankfully I had 3 packages, and then I was able to piece one of the E's together using an F and an I. And I just cut those apart and super glued them together to make that final E. And then I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in crimson and paint those letters. So another option that I had thought of and was originally going to do was to make little roofs using the craft sticks and just stain them with some antique wax. But then when I put it on there, it looked a little too springy. But as I'm doing this voiceover, I realized I could have just sprinkled them with some glittery faux snow, and that would have taken that spring look away. So just remember, you have so many different options and ways to do this, and these are pretty expensive in the stores. So no matter how you decide to decorate them, I think it's going to be super cutie patootie. So I wanted to make this project CRICUT free. So I'm going to be using the scripture Romans 15:13, which says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him." It actually goes on to say, "so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." But I didn't have room for that, so I just left that section off, but it still gets the point across. So I'm going to be using the transfer method by using my pencil and just rubbing it all over the back of my printout. And I'm using the font Forestea script, and then once I put it onto my house, I'm going to go over it with a pencil and it'll transfer so I can see where to go over it with my Sharpie marker. You could also do this by hand, but I wanted to give it a little pizzazz with this font, and so this is a really easy way of doing that. I also didn't glue my red letters down until I was sure of the placement, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go over to the side like my words were, or if I wanted them in the middle, but I thought it looked better with them being in the middle. And then once everything's done, I'm gonna place my houses upside down and I'll attach them at the top and the bottom using some first aid tape. And you do wanna be careful. I do this all the time. I get them in the wrong order. So just be careful with that and make sure that it reads the right way. And here it is, all finished, and I just love how this turned out. Again, it gives you that nice vertical coverage, but it's a lot easier to cut because I know some of you have a hard time doing that. I know I do. So this is just another option, and I think it turned out so pretty. I love it, and I hope you like it too. For this Dollar Tree DIY, again, change of plans from my original design. I used these wreath stands that were available in the spring and summertime, and I haven't seen them since, but I'm going to take off the back legs and the little holder pieces using a screwdriver and my muscles, because we can never underestimate the power of physics, my friends. And then instead of the nautical rope, it was a little bit too tight when I used it, and it took 5 rolls just to do 1 point. So I changed that up, and I'm going to be using these buffalo check placemats instead. So I'm first going to assemble my massive star by placing the legs of the stands against the crossbars and then attach them with some zip ties. And as with most of my projects, this was a learn as you go DIY. So I realized I should have put 3 star points together first and then zip tie them all together. But that's what these tests are for. And now you'll know the right way to do this. Now, I only had 4 of these wreath stands, so I did have to use some electrical tape and 2 of those back pieces that I detached to make that 5th point. And I know not everyone will be able to find these until next year, but Michaels and Hobby Lobby do carry them, but they're $3 and $4 each, so not as budget friendly. But you could also use wire hangers and shape them into big points, or you could use the plastic hangers from Dollar Tree, but it just won't be as massive. But that might work better for some of you too. So I ended up using 4 of these placemats, which I just found in black and red too, so you have that option. And I cut them on the diagonal and separated the liner from the front piece, and then cut the black fabric only on the short side. And then I hot glued one to each of my points, and I folded the tip down first so that I could cover it with the black fabric, and then it would have a cleaner edge. And then I folded over the open side and glued that down as well. And then when I got to the crossbars, I just cut a little slit so it would fit around there. So then I took my 4th placemat and cut out a pentagon kind of shape to cover that middle portion of the star. And that's going to all be covered up, but we need that to help attach our little pretties to the front. So I'm just arranging some Dollar Tree Christmas greenery and some whitery, and I'll use another zip tie to keep those in place. And then just use the same pieces on both the top and the bottom, and then I'll spread those out once they're attached. So now it's time to make a perky bow, and I'm using Dollar Tree's burlap ribbon, some red netting ribbon, and what I thought was black glitter ribbon from the Halloween collection, but it had spider webs on it. But after I made my bow, I put that on the back and you totally couldn't tell. So to make my bow, I just folded my ribbon over so that there's 3 loops on each side, and then I'll find the middle and make tiny little slits, and then I stack those on top of each other and attach them with a chenille stem, and then I'll twist that on the back and then foof out all of my loops and attach it to my swag in the middle. And then to give my star some dimension, I used the stuffing from an old pillow before attaching my swag, and then closed up the pockets with some more hot glue. So then to attach my swag, I'm going to poke some holes into the middle placemat and then feed some more of those chenille stems through there and then secure it on the back. And you definitely don't want to look at the back because it's not very pretty, but we're looking at the front, right? And then to cover any of those other seams, I spread my greenery out and added a Dollar Tree Christmas sign, which happened to have a hole at the top and a big bell ornament, and it was done. And here it is in all of its Bethlehem and buffalo check glory. And this guy is so big. It's just like my cornucopia on steroids from another video. But this would be perfect over the fireplace or pretty much anywhere because it also stands up so you could lean it against the wall. Again, the possibilities are endless. I love it and I hope you like it too. I hope you all enjoyed these projects, and if you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, maybe even share it with somebody. Remember the reason for the season. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!